So, yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hello. Welcome to the Upstairs Bars. Very nice, relaxed networking kind of session. So, session one, before I introduce Aziz should introduce himself, just some housekeeping. Fire exits are here. What we'll do in case of fire, there won't be one today, don't worry, fingers crossed, touch wood. If there is one, I will be meeting outside the hall. Okay. Yeah, it has some pens, the session is recording. Okay. If you need to have a comfort break or anything like that, feel free to go out, that's absolutely fine. You can go down to this cafe bar area, we'll start the toilet here, we'll also use the toilet for 50% social session. Okay.
Okay, and when
I'll be here, don't worry.
I can talk for an hour if I get to change the slides. Anyway, nice to meet you all. I'm Cece Carrero, and I've been mentoring since the beginning of this program, and it's a treat today for about 2 weeks. My mentees for the first time. So, and my session is a toolkit for freelancers. Before I start, I thought what I'd say is there will be time for questions at the end, but you're welcome to ask questions throughout. I know that everyone operates at a very different pace, so if I'm speaking too quickly, tell me, I will slow down. And as I say, if you have questions or you don't understand something, raise your hand and we'll make sure that is answered. I've done a slide presentation and I've got some handouts on contracts and things, but I know that you're a really wide-ranging group of individuals. So some of it you may think, oh, that doesn't apply to me, but try and think laterally. And if you really think, oh, that doesn't make sense to me, ask. I'll try and gear it towards your specific needs, because I know some of you may be putting together teams, but some of you may be part of teams that have different concerns and issues about fits, about finding work, about networking, but hopefully we'll cover all your bits throughout the session. A little bit about me. Oh, no, you can move on. So I've been working for 40 years, which is a bit scary. So you're smiling because you're probably not far off from me. But I was lucky, I got a job after first year university. So it took me 9 years to get my bachelor's degree because I had a really good job. So that's why I've worked for so long. And until the past 5 years, I worked for organizations and institutions. So I always had a paycheck. And being a freelancer was the most terrifying thing I could possibly imagine. But I took the deep plunge a few years ago, and it hadn't been for COVID. Even with COVID, I managed to survive and keep working throughout. So you can do it. And part of being successful at it is probably some of the networking and meeting people over the years. But I appreciate that some jobs you can't freelance, you're a costume designer, so that is heavy work. But I was very lucky. I worked for organizations and led organizations, including Dances, Switch, and dancers in the waterfront. So I've worked in many countries in North America and in Europe. And currently I represent choreographers, designers, and one composer. But I also mentor on the scheme and around the world. And I've been working recently with Australia Council and Store. But last summer, I was fortunate to be on the freelance task force, which was set up by FUEL. And from that, there were 160 of us, and some of us set up a dance group, and that's continued with council. And at the end of this month, we've managed to get that and that's been a real eye-opener to the freelance world and many people who constitute that world. So I've learned a lot last summer as part of the program. So now it's, I guess what I love about what I'm doing now is giving back and sharing what I do know, but also learning all the time from all of you. So hopefully will be an exchange today. I don't have all the answers always, but I can try. So the thing I thought we'd start with was getting started, taking your idea from concept to stage. And I know for some of you, this might not be relevant, and we will talk also about how to find it. I guess some of you are, is anyone just at the beginning of their career? Right at the beginning, some halfway, some maybe working 5 to 10 years. No, some. So let's think about it. I've got an idea. I've just graduated. I want to make this amazing piece. What do I do? And then how do I take that piece on that journey to get where I want to go? And hopefully, if you've been in training, you can start by, if you want to make work, choreographer, theater director, those training opportunities give you opportunities to make work. And it's taking advantage of all those opportunities. That's one of the things right in front of us. We don't realize they're there, but it's about taking advantage of everything around you. Because then when you graduate and you're out there in your own big world, it's okay. I'm desperate to write a script or make a dance work, and how do I take it on that journey? Which is a bit scary, especially if you're doing it. Find like-minded colleagues in school to work with. I mentored a group called Paper Birds. And I have to say, they were really inspiring because they met at college and they kept working together 20 years on. So we're still working together. And I think there's not just a camaraderie, but people you can brainstorm with, share ideas, and share the pain and agony of that journey, and also the good things of that journey. Because one thing to think about when you've got an idea and you want to move it forward is, how am I going to get this where I want it to go? Most of us want to go. I think we want to sit in the studio and just make a piece for ourselves. Can't do. We like Charles Ives, write lots of music, stick it in a cupboard, and you die and realize you're a genius. I think most of us want to be discovered in our lifetimes. And sometimes you may be successful and sometimes nobody's going to be interested in working with you. But when you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you have to go for it. And you have to think about how you're going to do this. Can I do this by myself? Just make a solo? Do I need to hire other people to work with me? Can I convince my friends to do this with me for free? That was the starting out. So it's taking that idea to that next stage and thinking about who you need to make it a reality. And often I think it's an expensive art form, which needs space to move. So think about who you know who give you space for free. Starting point. And also thinking about, I may have to invest in it. And I know that's sometimes a hard thing to swallow, but I don't think anybody owes us a living. So, and if you look at big entrepreneurs, they often have to mortgage their houses to do stuff. But I think you do need to probably invest a bit, probably have another job on the side to just start yourself going. And then you think about what's this going to cost me? I think one thing we learn as freelancers is don't do anything. Make sure you pay yourself. And look at various ways of funding. Think about Kickstarter. Do a Kickstarter. Don't put 15,000 as a target. Don't think it's just a number you put out there. I know we're over 15. Raise it. No idea what's. So, because if you don't make the target of Kickstarter, you don't get anything. So start low. Think about who you know, all your parents' friends, your teachers. Just think about everybody you know who might want to put $5 or $10. And if your parents have a rich friend, make sure you send them an email. But you just need to start like at 2,000 or something, or 1,500. If you achieve that, tap yourself on the back, and then. But when you start off, don't start with a massive amount. You'll end up with nothing. Go back and start over again. Think about people who maybe start for free. But sometimes it's what you can give them that you don't realize you can do special. Think about people who might co-commission for you. You're all Mercury Creatives. Come talk to the Mercury and see whether they'll give you free space, whether they'll commission work or support you. And the worst thing they can say is no, but if you don't ask, they won't. And of course, think of public funders. authority. Think of health and well-being. Think about the Arts Council. But again, don't go to the Arts Council. You're just starting out. Your first project grant has to be start low. But I know they're about to change thresholds. But if you apply for 50 or 100, a lot less students in terms of the Arts Council. Start low. Make some, even if you don't get the money, it's not like it doesn't take sense. It's really try and think laterally, but where you can get all that support. And unless you're super confident and a genius, I wouldn't go with creative projects. Start low, your way up. And also, while you're thinking about how you can raise money, think about who are your stakeholders. Not just financially, but and for those of you who are making work, that's probably say if you're a designer. You also have to think about who are my stakeholders when I graduated from college. Who are the people who like my work? What will turn to for advice on how to get out there? Should I be applying for things like the library design prize? Sometimes very, I don't believe, I know a lot of people say, I don't do competition. But sometimes you have to do some of those things to get your, some of the panel might not win prize, the panel might like your work. So sometimes you might not really feel comfortable being in an environment that gives you an opportunity to see. And you can just call, get in touch with them and say, okay, I know I can win, but talk to them. There's nothing to lose by talking to them. And then think about, as part of all this, what you're doing, the kind of work you do and where it fits. Because if you are making work that is, let's say, LGBT focus, then do your homework and research the things you're interested in. Just throw it out there to everyone. It's narrow down, not too narrow. If you think about what are the festivals, what are the little things, what are the little pioneers that are doing. So let's say you're doing LGBT, whatever, then you're going to probably talk to Marlborough Theater down. You're going to talk to Mayfest. You're going to talk to very specific different festivals and try and get their attention because you might fit in. Just throw it out too widely. Festivals, and you probably will get depressed because no one responds. I don't get responses sometimes, and you chase. I mean, there's a limit you can chase, but you can follow up with people. Try at least get a conversation. A lot of people will never be honest enough to program you. Say, I really want your honest feedback. You'll get it. It's no quick market. And there's also, so there's trying to get people to present you. There's trying to self-present. Always Edinburgh Fringe, which you can lose your shirt. It's not cheap to go to Edinburgh. Maybe that will change after this year. You'll need to watch the Edinburgh space because it got so big pre-COVID. It's all being reevaluated. But it's a great place to be seen. Lots of different people. It's a place to get reviewed. Does the host of the one. And so careful. It's so much work. To keep for venue most often. Find a venue that's going to program you people that they're not going to campus. How that be quickly to get sure. And just great again. So whilst it's been great for some people, I think the musical things laughing away from the bank now, I think, hopefully post-COVID, but it's not easy, but it is an option. But I guess I would be nervous 2-year-old said they were going to Edinburgh. I thought, oh my God. And are you sure you want to do this? Because you might come back forward and wet. So I just be mindful of that. Ideally, what you want is someone to present. That's not great. And I would say, if you're starting out, try and share them with them. They bring their own friends and family, and you bring yours. Start to build. And as long as the works don't look the same, they complement each other. Screens, so whether it's writing, new plays or dance or whatever it is. And having those, and I know you will say it's impossible to get a venue to talk to me. But if you throw out the net 20, this one's frozen. But also think of studio shows. And then the big thing to think about is background support. Do it by myself. Who do I need? What do I need? Maybe do a little SWOT analysis of yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? What are your threats? And be really honest with yourself. There might be things that you're good at that you don't realize you're good at. And then being really honest about the things you really might not like doing, but you're good at, which you aren't good at. And where you can get yourself. So you might need to contract people. And I know everyone says, I need a producer. That's the magic. Producer's going to solve my problem. I have an issue with that word producer. I have no idea what that means. I mean, I do, but I just think, what does that really mean? And I think if you break down, what do I really mean? You might not be a producer. You might need someone to write press releases. You might need someone to help you with social media. You might need someone to write an application. That's not a producer. And there are great people out there who can write. And you'll say, I can't afford it, but if you write most of it, they know how to format it. It's much cheaper. But really think about, what do I really, really need? Especially when you're starting out, break that down. Yeah, so just really think about where I need help. And the other thing is, your generation, most of you, you're brilliant on social media, so take advantage of it. Instagram is a gold mine in arts. Put a picture, you might get 20 hits. Put a video, you get 200 hits. So people do watch. People program are looking at Instagram. It's really annoying for people like me sometimes, because you see these talent people who are, and they're not really talented. They've got 20,000 followers, and they're just really smart on that. So join the gang, because you will get traction. And if you follow interesting people, they might follow you back. So Instagram seems to be the thing right now. Maybe something that I don't know about, but Instagram is quite an interesting one in the arts. And it's videos, and you have to be super careful with what you put on there and make sure you've got attention. Any questions on that? There's a slide at the end, but I'm going to put it, I'm going to talk about it before I go on to this, which is, because I know some of you are not making work, but you're looking for work. So where do I find work? And I have found that there's a lot of stuff for free out there. You don't have to pay for to find out about working opportunities. There's loads of Facebook groups. And whatever art form you're in, it's worth exploring those Facebook groups. I know with dance, we have a freelance dance group. There's a British choreographers group, there's an international choreographers group. So I would really snoop around. There's the floor leadership. I'm not a floor graduate, but I'm on that group, and there's always interesting jobs on that. There's Mandy, which was, I don't pay for it, it's listings. There's Arts Council, which you probably know. There's Arts Professional, which does weekly listing of jobs. Again, pay for that. There's Freelancers and Theater Work, which isn't so much jobs, but feel like Dance Freelance Task Force also has, I weekly newsletter with loads of jobs. And you just go onto the website and sign up for free. Again, you can dance for people dancing, on dance for paying those jobs. Twitter, following the right people, there's lots of jobs always on that. Arch jobs. So it's worth just following lots of different things on social media or getting sign up to emails. I sign up to loads of emails and some of them are rubbish, you just delete them. But and also some of you might want agents, if you're a designer or composer. But I think some of it's have to be more proactive and just remind the agent to take more. So it's connecting that in a minute about networking, but some of the networking is just being going to open nights, talking to people, taking that glass of wine, taking a sip, taking a deep breath, and just going out and talking to people you've never met before. And I know that's hard. The more you do it, the easier it gets because it is about all of that. And I'm sure you probably have other networks, but we'll talk about that, which is where we are now. So how do I build my networks and my guest lists? Where do I start? So I'm going to give you an example when I moved to Suffolk. I moved to Suffolk to run Dance East. I didn't know a living soul in Suffolk. I started doing performances. And we wanted to invite people so we could find out who our constituents were. We had no idea. So I came before.
GDPR.
It's free GDPR, so I probably couldn't do this now, but there are ways to leave. So I printed out the entire mailing list of Dance East, sat on train journeys to London and went through it. And anyone who didn't have a door number, street number, had a Rose Cottage or Loudon Hall, I'd circle them all. We invited those people for drinks because we didn't know anybody. And this is the Wolseley Theatre was closed for a year and a half. That I was running Dance East. It closed down. Lots of problems. So I didn't even have the.
Sorry, that was you were working with them.
I was working with them.
Doing your own work alongside. Or you were just that was the yes.
I was a director. I needed a guest list. I didn't know how to invite people other than the Arts Council and local authority and councillors. We didn't know who could possibly support us and give us money. And I'm a true believer that we should just rely on funding. So I just took that database, circled everyone on it. It was an interesting database. And we invited people, and some people were quite hilarious. I'm not quite sure why I'm here, but it's really nice to have a drink. So we all chatted with these people. Some of them probably had no money because they lived in a Rose Cottage and 2 bedrooms, but they had a great time, and we got them involved in wanting to buy tickets. And that's really important. Not just about getting money, it's about having stakeholders to say nice things about you. Some of them were really wealthy people who lived in these halls. So over the years, we slowly. And you need to talk to people. Don't just invite them for a drink and stand over here with your friends and colleagues and let them stand there. You need to connect and go up to them and just ask them who they are. Do they like theater, whatever? They must have come for a reason. And just the more you find out about people, you can go back to your database and write down Mrs. Long, and she was really charming. She's really interested in dance, and she used to do belly dance. I mean, you can find out things about people that will be books for the future. And you need to just remember that. I had a chair who was really loaded. I couldn't figure out how to get any money out of it. And I just kept giving money. And one day, he just said, oh, yes, when I was a young boy, my mother on New Year's always danced with Sir Frederick Ashton at the party on New Year's Day. Good Jane. Okay, so how would you like to name Sir Frederick Ashton Studio of Dancers? Oh, yes, that'd be a great idea. How much would that be? So there you go. But it took me a year or two for him to tell me that about his mother, and he had the song spot for Sir Frederick Ashton. So now this is Frederick Ashton Studio. But you have to kind of wait and listen until they tell you the thing you want to hear, and it might surprise you, it might be connected. Nothing to do with the art form, but just a personal memory or a place place or thing. So to say all that, you are probably all better connected than you realize. What I often do when I'm mentoring people is say, do a mind map. However you want to do it. I'm not very good at it. But just do a mind map of your life and your art's life. It's not just that people know the arts, but maybe they're friends with your parents when you were little, or maybe it was a neighbor. But sometimes when you do that, you realize that you're not, what's that place, 6 degrees of separation, whatever. You're not, you're probably one separation from someone you know. And I truly believe that. So it's sometimes worth just thinking, who did I meet when I was in college? Who did I meet? Who were my teachers? Or when I was in high school, were there people who were part of my art school? Think about that. They start to be your stakeholders. You might be able to turn to just for advice. Just say, oh, you know, I need some help. Think about who are those people. And sometimes they're not in the arts, but they can open the door if you want to do health and well-being. They might be a doctor. They might be health, you know, people might surprise you. So you just need to think about that. Or when you're doing a contract, you need legal advice. Maybe, you know, someone's neighbor was a lawyer or someone was a business person in fitness. You just never know. Football club. Football club can be a door in to do some dance and football. So really need to think about who do I know, but who do I know that I don't think I know? Does that make sense? And I really didn't know it myself. But it was through people, and I remember one lady took me to lunch with someone, and said, oh, she's such an obvious person to come join the board, but no one bothered. So one person just to and then you might not get an instant result. Sometimes it takes some time. So the other thing I was asked to talk to you about is how do I develop my guest list? Well, I'm just going to help some of them. But you need to think about who needs to see my work and why. And sometimes take a punt. I once invited Sir Richard Eyre to a performance because I happened to have his email. And he said yes, and he came. And the woman who I was working for was like, oh my God, I will get him. I'm like, don't ask, I just have to have his email. And I said, cheap email. So sometimes cheap emails are worth sending to people. But they have to, you have to know why you're doing it. And that maybe they might be interested in your work. And divide your guest list into sections. So potential donors, press, presenters, I want to call the gatekeepers, the people who have influence, do the curating and the programming decisions. And of course, friends and family. Just don't just invite friends and family, because that means parents are probably paying your rent and money just going around in a circle. It's like when you run, you know, a 10K, don't just go to your friends and family circle. Broaden it out. And avoid giving away free tickets. Really be mean. And don't give away pairs. Six, even if it's press, and you can only afford one ticket, that's the one you have to pay. So, especially COVID, because we less money comes to you. Generations of people just handing out comps. And in Europe, they certainly don't do that anymore. Even if they have to charge, you know, things for actors might get 3 comps, and then their guests have to pay 15 euros for the rest of the tickets. Just think about why you're giving away comps. And if you've got a sponsor and you say, you're giving me £2,000 and don't give them 10 tickets, give them 2 or 10 and so you just, you know, the reason why they're sponsoring is not to get all these free tickets. Any other thoughts? Yes, there's yep. Because a friend of mine did something with it. So there are some tricks to people. You know, if people have a lot of money, they often put planning applications in. Planning applications, you can usually find someone's home address. So I've written to a lot of people that way. But cheeky emails are sometimes, but as long as you're not coming out of the blue and you're really clear about what you want and what you need. And I think you need not a track record, but there's integrity to what you want. It's not just coming off the wall. And I think it is worth it. Like as you know, the German dancers is called the German dancers. And at that time, the German foundations, they stopped doing it. So I had project money dances with German. And then I was really desperate. I was not reaching my targets. And I went to the director at the time, Rowan Dawes, who suddenly passed away. I said, Rowan, please come to the capital. She said, get a hold of the annual report and read it carefully, especially this page. And she said, I remember the conversation with you. So I read it, and it was just a line where the chair kind of opened the door to the capital. Just a turn phrase. She led into it. So she said, don't mention my name. You write to him and use that paragraph that he wrote. Letter to him. So I did. He called me in. It took a year, and he was hard work. It was in his 80s, but he gave us help. So it just, it's the devil's in the detail, I guess. And yeah, because I was in a panic at that time. I was going to go back on my past and I'm like, I'm not a magic wand. I don't know where this money's coming from. Try all you can, but there's no magic. So cheeky letters often work. And you don't need to know them. Just get in touch with them and be, be real and don't maybe ask for anything. Just ask them, open a door. And if they don't like you once they meet you, then it'll be whatever. But it just it's about being clear about what you want. I'm trying to find an example. It's not about money, but I used to do these international think tanks for artistic directors, and I quite fascinated by football and dance. So I said I wanted a Premier League football manager to come and speak, and everybody laughed at me. Then I found someone who's chair of arts council in the East, and said, "Oh, I know someone who might help you." Rain Taylor, ex
Watford.
and Watford. Thank you. So this guy was on the board of Watford. So I wrote a cheeky, kind of introduced me to Graham. I wrote a cheeky email to Graham because I was completely nuts. Took him out for a whole year to see the performances. And he became a very good friend. He was an inspirational guest speaker and talks. He became then a supporter of Broken Roll Ballet, but sadly passed away. But he was extraordinary and he really got it. So sometimes those cheeky emails really, and it wasn't about money. I could pay him, but I just wanted him to, and he got it. He totally got it. So it just find those people who really understand what they're about. Want to go on that journey. Anyway, so I feel like I've got half an hour, and there's a big section about contracts. And I've got some examples now. Someone that's for you. Where do we start? So I brought you some generic contracts. Has everyone's signed a contract at some point? Has anyone ever read the contracts they've signed? You have? Oh, good. No, I know. So, I don't think I have enough for everybody. That's one. So I've got 3 different samples. We can talk through. So you're going to get a dancer contract, a venue contract, and the choreographer / director contract. So, I'm not go through it line by line, but I'm gonna highlight some stuff and then I kind of assume probably a question. So, number one, I hate contracts for years, even when I was at Dancy's. And I mean, how many of us have read our marriage contracts? How many of us read our mortgage contracts? We probably don't. We just go to that page and sign it. And Dancy's, honestly, I do not really pay much attention to contracts. So slap my hand. And it was only when I became a strict pilot company where I found out that I had to negotiate contracts with all the freelancers. And then my PA also didn't know much about contracts, had to drop the contracts, and they didn't get to finance. And now I'm learning most artist directors around the world negotiate contracts. Sometimes CEOs do, but no one is trained to do it. And yet they're doing it. And I became quite intrigued, so I started reading them properly. And I do like negotiating, so that helped. But you start to read them and you think, oh, okay. It's much more complex, but it's also really important because this is protecting you and it's also protecting them. And they're interested in protecting themselves and you're interested in protecting yourself. So, and sitting on the freelance task force last summer, a lot of people, one of the biggest things with freelance was, I'm terrified of contracts. I'm too afraid to question anything because I'm afraid I'll be thought it's difficult. They'll never invite me back if I start negotiating my fee. And this was 2010 or low or even some little company where people were just scared. Basically, but even saying, and I thought, wow. So some just basic tips. Read it and read it and reread it and mark up what you don't understand. But before you even get to reading the contract, try to discuss the terms, get them in writing in an email before you agree to seeing a draft contract. Some people try and throw a contract at you, but they don't. And then you have to figure out what they're offering them. So maybe put in an email. How many weeks do you need? Either it's sessions. So how many sessions do you want? What are you going to pay me? What if it goes over? Are you going to pay me more if it goes over what are the agreed times? What is the fee? Does it include travel? Does it include accommodation? Does it include per diems? Does it include holiday pay? Will there be royalties? So just ask lots of questions, and they have a duty of care to tell you what they are. And if you don't, in this country, we really have an issue because equity publishes minimum. Even if you're not an equity member, people like me, I still put equity just out of curiosity. But equity minimum is minimum. If you go to Europe, it's based on each year that you work. So if you work for 15 years, you go to chart to tell you what you should be paid, which is very nice. You don't have that here. So if you're a recent graduate, yeah, accept equity minimum. But if you've been working for 15 years, don't accept equity minimum. And I know it's scary and whatever, but you have to ask questions. If you don't understand the clause, ask them to explain it to you. And if they can't, then you have to rewrite the clause. And I have to say that because of COVID and the whole digital thing, it got really scary this year. I mean, I got some developing a creative practice money just to go to a media lawyer to help me figure out all these media digital clauses. I was finding that companies were sending me these contracts. They didn't know what the clauses were. They were making them up as they went along. And in the end, we all need to protect ourselves. And only you can protect yourselves. They're only interested in themselves. So you have to find that medium. So if you don't understand something, ask. If they don't like your question, you have to really push them. Sometimes they don't know. We're some fancy dancing lawyer has put together contracts for a theater and they don't make any sense. And just because you offer a fee doesn't mean you have to accept it. Tell them you're going away to think about it and then do some homework. I mean, don't come back asking for crazy amounts because they're probably going to find someone else. So you have to find that. think about the number of hours, days you need to work. Do you have to travel to where you're going? They're not going to pay for travel if it's in the same city, but you need to consider how long it's going to take you to get there. Take up, you know, if they're giving you one session a day, it takes you an hour and a half to get there and back. It's a whole day for you. So make sure your expenses are covered. Minimum pauses to watch out for. If work is being filmed for commercial purposes, in DVD, it's a separate contract. You will be paid for something else. Don't let them buy you out. Whatever you do, make sure there's a clause that says, yes, they have permission to film the work, but should they or a third party wish to film the work for commercial purposes or DVD or Blu-ray or any magical thing that doesn't yet exist on the planet, it's illegal. And that different because they don't just want to buy up. Also watch your cancellation clauses. Try and make sure you get paid for 3 installments. One on signing, one when you start rehearsals, and one for that way, if it's canceled, you can make sure that you don't need to get money back. And I know with COVID, it's been a nightmare. I have to say that my contracts have taken my life, and I only have one. 18 months. Claim for both of the credit. Everyone else is making up. So you understand that freelancers. So yeah, because he was paid upfront. Everyone else is against the shows. Around the world. Right. So you need to make sure those clauses are in the contract. And if they cancel 2 days before the premiere, paperwork, you need to make sure. But there will be clauses for COVID now, lockdown. So before it was just force majeure. Pandemic comes into, but now you see that there are clauses. So read them very carefully. Make sure that if you're, especially abroad, and you contract COVID while you're in the studio, they love to happen. And that needs to be in the contract. And some will just say, oh, but that's taken for granted. Nothing's taken for granted. Don't ever take it for granted. It has to be right. And I think with force majeure, I'd say always to make sure it says that both parties will make their absolute best efforts. Otherwise, they just won't do it. Also, make sure that they have insurance. And that you have insurance. I think that's important. Some people love to lump your fee, your accommodation, your fees, and your travel. They'll say, this is yours, you go sort out yourself. So you need to really be good at calculating what the accommodation is, and what that city is, what is check. They fluctuate. London, Leeds, Newcastle, or here in Europe, and travel. And you know, it's not enough. You need to say that's not enough. What should we do to pay? Ideally separated, but more and more. So you're super careful about that. And if they do lump it together, make sure you make installments so that you're not paying. Make sure that you get a video of the work that you've made within a month of the premiere. And ideally, get a 3-minute clip or less that you can put on your websites. If that's all you have left, some people are really mean about giving you photographs. they'll claim they own the photographs, and this is what, so you need to make a contractual agreement, selection of photographs that you print the photographer. You should be taxed, freelancer, but outside the UK, be really careful, especially now with Brexit. Visas, they should pay for the visa, not you. Often you have to fill in an A1 form, which proves that you pay social security in this country. Some countries claim double. So they'll try and charge you social insurance. And then on top of that, they'll try residency. Most countries have tax agreements. But right now, Brexit.
May I interrupt and just say, also you mentioned per diems. Getting per diems specified in a contract, that's much easier for tax purposes as well. If somebody said this is expenses for travel and accommodation, you produce expenses vouchers for travel and accommodation. Nobody's going to ask any questions. If it says, here's your fee, this is my expenses of travel, then you've got to justify it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The other thing is about tax and freelancer status. I don't consider this, but I did try to find out more about your status as a freelancer. Because what was extraordinary last summer, a lot of freelancers were moaning about maternity leave and all sorts of things. And it depends on what category of freelancer you are and what tax status you have. But you can, depending on how much you want to pay in tax, you do get some benefits. I'm no expert on it, but don't assume that, woe me, I'm a freelancer, so they're out to get me. You can claim a lot of things, but you also get certain brackets that will help you out in the future with your pension, if you have a baby and all of that. And I think there was this kind of, we're never looked after. There are better looked after if you want to be, but you need to get some guidance on that. Advice.
Yeah, I'm terrible with taxes and stuff, but
Yes, absolutely, and that's on my last slide, because I think we all think that they're not there. They are amazing, and it's free. So I'm just going through, cancellation clauses are really important. If they cancel a month before the premiere, and you put this month aside, and you have that money expected to come in, try and make sure that you get as much. They don't just cancel and go. I like to put a schedule in the contract, update sometimes. Some people will do that, some people won't. It just helps so that they don't use it. And I've also given you a venue contract. That's much more complicated. And I am no expert on venue contracts. You might think more than me, but again, everything is negotiable. Even venues will want to take 25% from selling the merchandise for you. You can negotiate that. They say they take a percentage of box office, you can negotiate that down. Or negotiate that out. But yeah, and always remember, if you've got an interval, they're getting taken to the car. If you don't have an interval, some venues will penalize you for that. Don't accept those penalties. So you need to double check that. But I would just say, if you don't understand a venue contract, ask someone else for advice. If you went to a school, maybe they have a theater, ask the person who does the contract. They are complicated. there's things called contras that can really eat into your fee. Start charging for every light you use or every extra, they'll charge you per people. So you just have to be really, really careful. And ideally, you want to be upfront or a box office split, because if you can see when you do a box office split, they have the impetus and will to try and sell the show. If you just hire a venue and you're been given a Monday night at the Mercury Theatre in Colchester, and they have a 3-week run of Pride and Prejudice, they're much more interested in selling Pride and Prejudice for 3 weeks than they are one night of your show. So ideally, you want a Friday or Saturday, but you just need to really be mindful of why they're giving you what they're giving you. And if they are giving you a Saturday, it's your first time for a leisure, it's not half term, and they've got cable work or whatever, and they don't know what else to put in. Theaters, especially Rex theaters like this, they want the marketing team wants to show that you build with word of mouth, things like that. So if you're involved in something like that, that's great. If you're dance, it's always a challenge and nightmare. Not dance, especially this house. So try not to get the Mondays and Tuesdays, and try not to rent a theater. I know sometimes you will have to do that. It's very costly and scary.
What's a usual split? What would you say was kind of a reasonable split?
It depends. You can do 60 to you and 40 to them until you get break even, and then after that you can flip it so that you get 80 and they get 20 or something like that. So you need to make sure you have break points so that once they make what they need to make, you should earn as much as you can. So, but I have done that. I mean, when I worked at the Peacock, I was really good at this, but I don't think just there. It's game venue and figuring that out. But if you know someone who works in a venue you trust, give you some advice. I just don't do that very. I mean, this one that I give you, I helped someone with, but I made him go to a friend's venue and I just double triple check. So yeah, and it depends if sometimes they'll do a guarantee of up to so much. Once they make, yeah, so it just, but once they make their money, try and get, if they like have 90 and they take 10, fantastic. I doubt it, though, it's probably 80-10. But hopefully, yeah, I mean, this was a very ambitious girl who's managed to raise enough money, who's renting a venue this autumn, but he's terrified. But he's, it's really hard. And there are gatekeepers, so and there aren't that many theaters who will help you out. So it's a tricky world. If you want to date in London, if you want to that press to see you with dance, there aren't that many who will just hire them, and if they're curating, they're the gatekeepers and they have their favorite concerts. So it depends what kind of work you're doing. Things like comedy and whatnot, it's easier, it's cheaper. Also, children's shows are cheaper because they have very quickly. Dance will be to the floor. Dance prefers not to do it the same day, get it. So it's about 2 days. So it does cost money. And I think post-COVID, everyone has less money, so fees are down, which is a bit scary. And when you're doing your budgets, make sure that you calculate what's it cost you. If you've got a company of 5 and you're from Colchester to Bristol, you need to make sure that that fee, you don't have more expensive funding, that fee is going to cover all your costs and whatever overnight. So, but I doubt you can cover it. So something. If you have a truck, a technician you're touring with, you have to pay your cast, whatever. So it all adds up. So I don't think any fee is going to be a lot of companies make money abroad. in a very difficult situation right now. Brexit, COVID. I mean, hopefully things will improve, but right now, I think we're all seeing. I am watching things. Any questions on these three? I know you haven't had time to really digest them. They're pretty generic contracts. Yeah. Which one are you missing? We've got the contract.
I might have one of those, Matt.
Some are interchangeable. If you're a designer, you usually don't get royalties. You can try to get royalties, but 9 times out of 10, you're not getting royalties. We sort of see royalties on the design contract. But if you're a designer, your license agreement should be almost the same as the producers, and a lot of companies don't like it. So basically, just to explain, you own the copyright to your design, that's your copyright. What you are doing is licensing that copyright to an organization. Some tried on and said they wanted in perpetuity. I would say they wanted in perpetuity and it's going to be aligned. That might not be a bad idea, but have great points. So that you're negotiating with these. Don't just do something. Usually contracts are, well, in opera, you do a new contract, you do the same production. So let's say you do Don Giovanni at the Royal Opera House, and that same production is co-commissioned by Avignon and Marseille and Royal Swedish. But you do, let's say, a ballet. Usually give a 5-year license. Maybe if it's something like a big production, you might give them 7. 3 years exclusive. So no one else in the world can do it. And after that, it's not. And then it's very successful. Great. Some people like to do cost of living for royalties, which is an interesting one. So they will cost of living, we negotiate for royalties. The other thing to keep in mind is if an organization doesn't work for consecutive months or 18 consecutive months, it also needs to go back and make sure it works. Or if the organization changes directors. The other thing to really watch out for is if you're a costume designer, make sure that so they can't use those costumes for any other production. Costume store or so you're taking your permission. We all know our conservatories. So if you're a designer, you're working with a choreographer, make sure that the license agreement is the same. And sometimes organizations refuse to do that, and you have to scream and yell at them that it's the same production. So the licensing has to be the same. So they don't like it. So, and every country is weird, different. Every organization is weird, different. So, and some of them pay, if you get an opera house contract, it's like 25 pages, and it's really boring. I'm sure they made it really long because if you weren't going to read it, some stuff is at the very end. Germans and Austrians and Swiss always say, oh, but that's taken for granted. Of course we would never do that, but of course we would never do that. They don't really want to put it in writing. They just insist it's in writing. They might say, of course we do that, but they might not. You're so good at it. I know it's really boring, and 9 times out of 10 there don't be any issues, but if there is an issue, So I'm mindful for 4 minutes. I'm going to go to my last slide, which goes back to our CC. So, what are my rights and where can I get advice? So, you often feel like you're very on your own. If you've got a contract with the National Theatre, let's say you feel that harassed or abused in some way, you feel very uncomfortable going to their HR team, even though you're in contract with them. You're in your head. They're going to protect their employees, which is something we came up with a lot, which is quite scary. So we started jokingly calling it the Citizens Advice Bureau. Even though we didn't know anything about it. I have in my head a weird view of the Citizens Advice Bureau. And I managed to send a cheeky email, and the CEO responded, and we've had 4 meetings with him. And he's been amazing, and it is free advice, and they're there for you. They have been overwhelmed during COVID, but they're not going to tell you what to do. They can give you really sound advice on all your rights and point you in the right direction. And we're working with them with dance to try and get links on some dance websites for them. So they've been really generous with us. But please do turn to them. They're not some rinky-dink thing on the street corner. So those people, not for me. They really are there for everybody. And they are franchised out. So some of them will have a menu that's much longer than others, but they don't. But if you go to their website, it really is worthwhile. I am not so on call about theater, but there's equity. But if you're not a member of equity, they're not so interested. So there's stuff up front you can get out of them. There's also, I found really helpful was Society of West End Theaters. Salt. They were amazing throughout COVID and really helpful to non-members. And so Salt can be a great website to visit. Advice Bureau, for those in dance, One Dance UK and dancing. Disability, shape, arts, and the musicians who they're still nice. Equity is really tricky. Remember, I mean, we came up with dance groups with a chart of how we wanted to be paid, and we were told that we can never publish it. There are cartels, and we look publicly like we are. So we've not been able to publish anything. Jailed for publishing recommended standards. So we learned a lot about cartels in Mexico. Anyway, there are cartels on those things with equity, and we kind of had our hands slapped. Equity's been great. The thing is, equity takes proposals every year to whatever it's called, ITC, and then it's negotiated, and those are the things that we all want to drop off the table. Your ITC is really so expensive. So equity, less than they do go with the demands that we make, but then they go with my proposal. So if you're a member of equity, I've heard pros and cons. I will never be a member of equity, so they met with us quite a bit. But there's a point where if you're not a member, if you work in a venue, this will be a member of ITC, so they will look after the interests of the venue. If the venue wants to support freelancers, remember, what I learned last summer was don't about the hand that feeds you. And lots of freelancers who just wanted to demolish all institutions. But most of us freelancers are a big workforce. So we have to work in partnership. And we are in tough times. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but I think it's worth always, whatever fee that's been offered to you, always ask for a bit more. If it's right. If you look at it and go, oh wow, that looks good, then don't push it. But if it really doesn't, feel right, then you blind choreographer has to work at the Royal Ballet School at the White Lodge in Richmond. And if we hadn't said, you're going to pay for all the transport, they wouldn't even say anything, because they're not. But there's no way to get into Richmond Park without some kind of taxi, because there's a park with deer, and it was cheap, and she could afford it. She lives in Brick Lane, so you need to. Sometimes it's not that they're being mean; they're just not. They don't think about your needs, so you need to be a bit selfish. And if you have childcare, think about that when you're negotiating. They don't really care whether you've got childcare issues, but you can throw that at them and say, I have childcare, so that's not going to work. But you need to do a calculation. So because you can't just say, well, I want an extra 150 a week because I've got childcare. Well, that's not their problem because they can't pay so much more just because of that. But you need to make sure that you're looking at your own life and take all of that into consideration. And holiday pay, some will say it includes, be really smart with holiday pay. This country can always say, oh, no, some of the contracts will say it includes holiday pay. You have to add that much. Go online, figure out what that is. So they're not the meanies on the other side, but they're also protecting themselves. So you need to see it. Any questions?
Just. Thank you so much.
I hope that was helpful.
So thank you very, very much.
There's a question here.
Yeah, no, can you do the next slide with you? And will you be around until today?
I'm going to be a little bit. I've got got to leave about 2:15.
Okay, so
Yeah, but yeah, there's my email address.
We now have a break in the cafe. What I'll do is spare kind of so I'll release them on that slide and grab them away to where you absolutely can. Yeah, very, very
I hope that was helpful.